When we heard Tyler Perry was releasing the 6888 on Netflix, a film of historical and cultural significance about black women in World War II, a lot of people thought, I hope he doesn't mess it up. I'm Heit.
And I'm Cheri.
And you've discovered Axiom Amnesia.
We want to thank all of the supporters who helped to make this video possible. If you want your name to appear alongside these contributors, make a one-time donation via Cash App, or you can head on over to patreon.com/Axiom Amnesia to enjoy all of the benefits of becoming a monthly subscriber. Just a reminder, this is the non-spoiler part of the review, and we'll let you know when it's time for the spoilers. So we went ahead and watched on Netflix the 6888, and I thought overall, wow, okay, Tyler Perry is undertaking this film, and I'm,
so
listen.
I'm not above bias. So when I hear Tyler Perry is making this historical film that's based on something that actually happened, I'm like, Tyler Perry, like, of course they would give it to Tyler Perry to do it. You know what I'm saying? And that's just how I go into it, because I have this certain impression of Tyler Perry, and I know how I feel about his previous works.
And it's just, to me, I think that he's made, some films that are good, but he is typecast, if you will, into a certain type of film. And that doesn't include things that I think are really important and culturally significant. They just tend to include things that are just like, okay, salacious and wild and,
Yeah, soap opera movies.
Yeah. And so, and plus knowing that these are real people, we want to be sure to honor them. I think of the most recent one that was about black women who did significant things in history. I think about Hidden Figures, and I think that, hey, the quality of the film, this is what I immediately have in mind when I think we're about to tell this story of black women in history. It better be good. So, so we watched it. It's a couple of hours long. It's accessible to a lot of people who have Netflix or somebody's Netflix password. So that's the good thing about the film. There were more good things. I was pleasantly surprised. Actually, I was more than pleasantly surprised. I was really, really surprised.
Yeah.
So it's starring Kerry Washington. Other actors in the film include Ebony Obsidian, Sarah Jeffrey, Oprah Winfrey, Mariah Brown. The main names we know are Kerry Washington and Oprah Winfrey, and maybe Ebony Obsidian. But there were a lot of new names and new people in there, and that's just perfectly fine. I liked that the movie got right to the action of what was going on.
Yeah, but there were some old names too, right? Sam Waterston, right?
Oh, yes, yes.
So the thing is, Susan Sarandon, so the white people, right? Like when I'm watching a black movie, I see the black movie. It's like when I'm watching a white movie, who's the black person they put in here? It's the opposite when I'm watching a black movie.
Right, and they had some...
And if they're recognizable. And
they had some like smaller roles, right? Because, Susan Sarandon was Eleanor Roosevelt and Sam Waterston played her husband, FDR. So, these were the majority, because the film was a majority black cast and it was majority about these black women. So, those were the stars that I initially named off.
And Dean Norris, right, who was from... Was it Breaking Bad? He's in a bunch of stuff now, but that's where I knew him from, was Breaking Bad.
And he was good in it. Well, I mean, you wouldn't expect him to be anything less, but
I don't know. We'll get to that.
He was good. He was good in it. But yeah, so the movie gets right to it, and we're thrust into what the deal is going to be. I will say at the beginning of the movie, it was a little confusing. Like, you knew it was going to be about these women who were in the army in World War II, but it wasn't clear what their mission would be.
Yeah, he pulled a poetic justice though first, right? You open up with these white people, you're like, what is going on? I came here for blackity black, right? And of course, but it opens up with a Mary McLeod Bethune quote, right? And then I see these white people in battle and stuff, and I'm like, wait, hold on, this is a war movie?
Yeah, because I wasn't expecting that, right? Actual action, packed stuff,
right?
And that was the stuff at the beginning. So we won't get too deep in that because we don't want to spoil it for you. But basically, it does get to the action. And then we wind up with this story unfolding over 2 hours. But one thing you did say to me was, okay, we're 30 minutes or so, 25 minutes into the story when we finally kind of see where this is all going.
Right. And then it's halfway through where I'm like, okay, now I'm invested. Right. Now you've done something. Right. So the story's a little clunky. Right. So if you don't know, the story is about this unit who basically ended up delivering a whole bunch of mail at a time where morale was low during the World War II because people weren't getting their mail.
In Europe.
Yeah, in Europe. So this black unit of women went over to Europe, and that was their task. And they were led by a black woman officer. So that's what happens, with a movie that you're trying to weave in all these other stories to keep the interest. And at the beginning, I think it's about one thing, one person, but that doesn't really develop, right? And then you introduce this other character who it seems like the story is really about, the, 101 protagonist, right? It's it kind of changes and becomes more about that. And I just think, we got the Tyler Perry guy weaving it together to give me a great cohesive story.
Right. And so, like you pointed out, I think that is a really good point, is that we have what seems like an antagonist also at one point in the story who kind of becomes the secondary protagonist or even the major protagonist, right? For probably, I guess it would be Act 2 and Act 3, right?
Yeah.
Of the story. So, let's get into our ratings, though, because I think that's really the best way to flesh a lot of this out. So first, let's talk about the plot of the film. What did you think about the plot?
I think it was good because the plot itself, it came together eventually, right? But it's about something of historical significance, and the overarching thing is these people need their mail, right? And then in the story, you have to convince me that they need their mail, and all these other things that's happened with these other characters. I need this to play out, right?
Right.
So I think it wasn't bad.
No.
Because how do you get the reason a story is meant to be told is a real story, a true story, is because the story is itself compelling.
Yeah.
So you can't get it wrong. And it's based off of an article.
Right. And a huge thing here is that this is a story that not many people apparently knew about. And I had never even heard of this before this story. Gayle King was like, why don't we know about this story? She didn't know anything about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So I'll just go ahead and give it about an 8 for the plot.
I think for my plot, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to give it a 9.
A 9?
I give it a 9. And the reason I'm going to give it a 9 is because, number one, you get bonus points anyway because this is history. So you're already matching it up. And so unless you deviate too much, which honestly, we really have no proof as to how much he actually deviated, because I do have a couple questions, because we do know
we'll answer them later.
That we will answer them in the spoilers portion. But I do have a couple questions about, what was the true nature of certain things in relationships, etc.
Yeah.
But that's perfectly fine, I think.
But I doubt because some parts, because when I watch things as a veteran, I see things differently, right? But I know this was 80 years ago, right? So my experience whenever I was in versus what would have been 80 years ago versus it being the Army, which I wasn't a part of, then I can't really be a stickler, for things that I may assume to be the way things go.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but just the all out, just telling this story, like I said, he was trying to probably do a little too much and stuff. So I probably would have gave him more. And I will say, I think that Tyler Perry did a pretty good job just overall, considering that this was a heavy undertaking. Yeah. This is not the light work of, let me write this screenplay in 2 days, and then we're filming it in 3 days, and in a week we have a whole movie. Right. This is not that. Because you have a story, you have I guess we got 3 pieces of the story. We have Major Adams and Captain Campbell, right? Right. Then we have Lena, right? Right. And then we have the group of enlisted friends, basically, who come together. Right. So, and what it's 4 or 5 of them, maybe even 6. And so when I get that, I need you know what I'm saying? I need those stories all to come together and for all of them to be developed, because we also have, this love story too between Lena and whoever else, right? Who you know about once you watch
in
the
the
film.
spoilers. Yeah. At the end of the day, he brought all of these things together in a pretty decent way for the plot. So I have zero complaints about the plot.
Okay.
As far as entertainment is concerned, let us discuss entertainment. I'll go first this time. I'm going to say for entertainment, I'm actually going to give it.
Bruh.
I was going to say, I was almost at the 10, but then I said, I'm going to give it an 8. And the reason I'll give it an 8 for entertainment is because historical films like this are not always like wall-to-wall entertainment. Like you really kind of have to pay a little bit of attention. And that's just the nature of a story like this, right? Where there's parts where you might want to pick up your phone. It's because you're watching at home. It's Netflix, right? So then you're tempted to kind of look at your phone. And, while we were watching, I was like, oh, let me go ahead. I wanted to boil some eggs. Let me just boil the water right quick. I just, I was away for a couple of seconds, but I could still hear what was going on, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I would say entertainment wise, sometimes you really kind of have to pay attention to the film because it's giving you all of this information that you need and whatever, and it is not the same as like a typical Tyler Perry movie where it's all salacious and you're like, ooh, what's gonna happen next, dun dun dun. You really are paying attention for the sake of understanding the history that occurred, and that's not always like a 10 in entertainment, But it's no shade to Tyler Perry actually in this case. It's just it was more so the nature of what we're talking about here. But it was pretty good.
Another thing I don't like, I know I don't like musicals. I don't like period pieces, typically. All right. And this is way back, right? It's not as far back as some, but, it's back then. And there is the obligatory big band dance scene.
Oh, yeah.
That's in here. Yeah. That's like the beginning part of Malcolm X is my least favorite. You know what I'm saying? Those parts like that where they're Lindy hopping. This basically happens in this film.
Yeah.
Lindy hopping.
Even as a musician, you don't appreciate the music.
Well, if it's the music, you gotta like the music. Just because it's music, it's just like every filmmaker don't just like every film
or every genre.
Like
something
a
like
music
that,
maker
right.
might like every song,
right?
So you gotta give one that I really like. But just for that, I have to bump it down to like a 9 for entertainment because I like the story and everything, and it was way better than that Tyrese movie, whatever that was called. Probably.
Yeah, Come Out Fighting, that came out in 2022. We watched that and oh boy was I disengaged with that film.
That one wasn't that good.
It was not good.
I was entertained by it, and but Cherie was saying she probably wouldn't watch it again.
I that's how I feel about it because honestly, these types of movies are not, once I get it, okay, I got it. I know what happened. I got the information. It was good to see, and I also take in the emotional aspects of the film, which in this case, there were some parts where I felt like, oh, this is emotional for me. I don't need to relive it 50,000 times. I know what happened. And to just compare it to Hidden Figures, for instance, like I got it. I got it when she was talking about how, Taraji's character was talking about how she had to, go across really far for the bathrooms because they were segregated and she couldn't use the bathroom right there in the building where she was. And so, here she is having to run across the campus in order to use the colored bathrooms. Yeah. So I got that. And so these are not things I feel like, oh, I'm about to just go watch it a bunch of times. Although I did tell you, films that are like biopics like Ray or Ali, I could watch those a few times.
Yeah.
But these kinds, not as much.
So the true stories, I watch it, then I want to know more, then it's probably done a good job. Right? Mm-hmm. Like, okay, you delivered this. Now I need to go see what's going on, what really happened and all that other stuff.
Well, and see, unlike you, I really do enjoy period pieces. I love a period piece. Now, World War II is not my period. My period is more so probably like Civil War, antebellum times, things like that. I really love movies from that depict that time.
Really?
Period.
So what do you think of the cinematography in this film?
I think that the cinematography in this film was pretty good, but I'm going to give it like a 7. And the reason I'm going to give it a 7 is because I have the question about whether or not AI was used
me too.
in this, and there were a couple of shots that looked like, I don't know, and I mean, AI has come a long way. right? But
Yeah. But it's people who do work and stuff too, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm gonna say what I think is it was pretty good. The cinematography, like the shots were good. Some of the shots I was like, whoa. One shot from like a vehicle or a Jeep, I'm like, all right, I see you, Tyler Perry. And then when they're getting their little quarters together and some of those shots, I'm like, okay, the boy doing his thing, right? But the part I'm like, hey, that's the White House. Why does it look like a model? That's look like clearly like somebody just made a model on a desktop and you filmed it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And then those were parts like, wait, is this AI? If not, it's still clearly green screen. Right. So we're not looking at super big budget or whatever.
But it was not as bad as Acrimony, because Acrimony had some bad green screen in there. It was just like, are we for real?
Yeah.
And then the other question I have, okay, so there is a point in the film, and this isn't a really big spoiler or anything, but there's a point in this film where they're using money. And the money that they're using, mind you, this is back in like the 1940s. The money that they're using is like big face
I had
dollars.
to rewind it. I was like, wait, was that big face 20? Hold on, go back. They all got big face.
Yes.
And we know big face means that the faces weren't as big as they are now. If you're young, you probably don't know.
Yeah.
You probably don't know how long the money's been like that. But in our lifetimes,
at least since the 90s,
they didn't have that different color in the money.
Yeah.
And the faces and the numbers weren't that big.
Right. Back in the day, the money was just green and less green.
So if they used that money, you could have tricked me, right?
Yeah.
If you used the money that I grew up with, you probably would have tricked me. But I think, bro, come on now. And then the amount of money that they had, that's something different.
So, it was a $20 bill, which in that time would have been like
$400.
Yeah.
$400.
Yeah. And so then what it was being spent on was kind of like, hold up, wait a minute. So
and it was a bunch of them, right?
Yeah.
It was like, dang, this is like thousands of dollars y'all have right here.
Yeah. Very strange.
Yeah.
For that. So, but
and the wigs and the hair.
So
and those sorts of
and
things.
is that part of the cinematography? Because I don't think we really have
we don't have a category for like the set and
costume. And so that's another reason why I rated the cinematography only a 7.
Yeah,
because I felt that things like that, the wigs were not that. I mean, they were not the worst Tyler Perry wigs.
Piece. But so my thing is, I'm gonna say it, we're Black. And I think that the women should have their natural hair, and maybe you actually perm it as if they had a conch, if they would have had a conch then, right?
Yeah.
And they just say, let's just slap on wigs and try to style them like maybe their hair would have been possibly.
Well, okay, so there's two things. One, I think that a lot of actors wear wigs, and not just the Black ones. I mean, we know white ones in white movies wear wigs, but I just feel that there's part of it that seems less detectable when
because that's just the actual texture. You know the texture of a Black person's hair when it's natural and permed or straightened with a hot comb versus putting some synthetic hair or some white people's hair on their head.
So on a scale of 1 to 10, like we've seen Tyler Perry wigs be like a 3.
Bruh, they were better than
so they were not that level.
It was
right?
just that it's a period piece and I expect to see their hair a certain way.
Well, it was really less about the quality of the wigs, but more about the styles that the wigs are in, not really being able to achieve the same look. Although I do think some of the women were, wearing their own hair at certain points in time. So it just, it just depended. That's number one. And number two, while we're saying that, women, should be wearing their natural hair right now as an actress, well, these actors and people who are famous their hair goes through a whole lot and they get beat up. And it wouldn't surprise me if under a lot of those wigs, edges are missing and things like that. And I'm not saying that in a funny way. I'm saying that your hair takes a lot of abuse, and even with whatever protective styles and everything else, there's a lot of damage that happens.
Sometimes the protective styles aren't so protective.
Yeah, and it just may not be able to really be achievable. And then some of these women have beautiful heads of hair, but it's not maybe what the look that they want for the
or not willing to cut it. Right, I'm not gonna cut my hair.
I know,
for this
right? We ain't cutting this hair for this movie. It ain't happening, right? So you kind of have to figure out what to do. And it sort of reminds me of because I have locks, as you guys know. And it reminds me of Halle and Chloe Bailey, where, they've had locks and they've had them for most of their lives. And I was noticing lately, after Halle had her baby, that her hair is actually kind of cut short now. It's in a short bob, whereas it had been down her back before. And I don't know,
What do you mean short bob? Like they're still locks?
It's locks, but it's at her like collarbone length. It's not long like it was before. And they do a lot of styles so that they can have, they've even worn wigs and stuff like that over the locks. And I'm like, how you fit all of that in there? Because the volume of my hair, I cannot imagine. I can't even fit it in a hat, much less under a wig. So, but my point is they've done a lot of styles, and I wonder if there was damage that was associated with like getting the weaved hair like put over your locks and all these other things that you're doing to try to achieve certain looks.
So there's a point in the movie where they have to set up their quarters and they set up a salon. Basically, you see the hair dryers and all this stuff, right? Mm-hmm. And then, but you made a comment about it.
Oh, I said, they have a hair salon and, they are trying to look good.
Yeah. But see, that's a part. So if you're talking about, I don't know, like, do you bring in Black women writers to help with this? It always comes to that, right? Because, all right, we know that it's important and stuff, but also we're going to get to the military consultations too, right? Where that part of grooming standards of being Black in the military as well. So that's part of, we're going back, right, to plot and stuff, but that was part of my also issue with some of the writing, and we'll get into that when we get into some spoilers. But I still would just say that the cinematography is about I'll just give it a 7, because if I look at the movie, it don't look bad.
No, it doesn't. I mean, it's well shot. The women look great.
Yeah.
I believe it. I'm in the world that they take me to. I feel like I'm in the 1940s.
Yeah.
Aside from maybe little small things like the money, but it goes back to, one of the questions I was prepared to throw out was like, could Tyler Perry get an Oscar? Right. And I asked the question knowing full well for this film, no. And the reason being because of the lack of attention to detail to the things that are just pristine in the Oscar-worthy films, right? There's just certain things that you just can't cut corners. Some of them we'll get to in the spoiler section, but one of them is the things like the money, like low-hanging fruit of like, you just cannot have $24 in a film like this.
Yeah, you just can't. That's just a big thing.
So stuff
especially
like that.
If you're making it a point to point it out. If you point it out, if you don't point it out, then maybe you can get away with it. But if you point it out and say, look at this money.
Right.
Come on.
And it brings the next thing I would point out that falls into that same category would fall into the acting side of things, which I would say is the accents. So there were accents that were put on early in the film. And it was 3 women from the same family, same household. And their accents all sounded so vastly different. And I was like, okay, maybe the daughter could sound different because maybe, she's considered more educated.
The daughter seemed like she had a butt on her back.
Maybe she was stuck up, whatever the deal. I could get with one person's accent being different, but they all just sounded like, hey, I'm from completely different parts of the country.
And they had basically the slave voice. Is what happened.
Yeah.
They're like, why are you going to go out of there?
Yeah. And it was very extreme. It was very exaggerated. And I was just like,
But I also think the same of Dean Norris. You said you liked him a lot.
I thought that he played the role of somebody who was very prejudiced very well in this film.
I didn't like his accent at the beginning, and maybe it took time for me to get used to it. But at first I was like, come on, he's overdoing it.
But I'll tell you who was on point with those accents and the acting. Obviously Oprah Winfrey. Let me tell y'all, Oprah is just a bajillion threat. Like, she was amazing in acting and she could even sing a little bit too.
Yeah.
And Oprah's accent was perfect because to me there is just a period accent of somebody who's clearly Southern.
Right.
She played Mary McLeod Bethune. Okay. So who's clearly either Southern or has a Southern influence, right, on her language, but it's not slave talk.
Right. And she probably was just like, hey, y'all, I'm from Tennessee and I'm going to talk like I'm from Tennessee.
Yeah.
And
or like older
did,
people in her
right?
family who she'd heard speak.
I'm Black from
like
the
that.
South. Right. But so that'd be part of the reason why you choose certain people for certain roles too, right? Because if you gonna have me try to do a New York accent, I'm gonna do it away.
Yeah.
And people in New York gonna be like, bro,
they're
what
gonna be
is
like,
it?
unbelievable. No,
I gotta
absolutely
get it,
not.
son.
Yeah.
I'm gonna make sure I get it.
It's not gonna work well for you. It's not. But I mean, so you have that, and then you have Susan Sarandon as Eleanor Roosevelt. Wonderful.
Yeah,
I guess
well.
you would consider her accent to be what's that, northeastern, North Atlantic kind of
New England.
yeah, that kind of accent. But these are like seasoned vets in here. Although the women who we were talking about earlier were maybe a little older, their accents were just too regionally
just too
specific.
much for me. Yeah.
And so that to me,
I wasn't around back in those 40s, so maybe, but I have listened to oral histories too. So
and then there was a point where, okay, so there's a tragedy. Just imagine if a tragedy occurs and then the person is reacting to the tragedy in the initial moments. And then later on, sometime in the future, they have a breakdown related to that same tragedy. Do you think that they would cry harder or more intensely or more emotionally the first time when this shocking tragedy happens, or later on in the film? And I feel like that was one of the issues that I had kind of with
who you assume the star is in the beginning?
Yeah. And so I was like,
Obsidian.
Okay, yeah, like I needed more here. I needed for you to act like this really was tragic, not
yeah. So so she had this big emotional part, right, in the beginning, and then she had one more towards the end. And the one at the beginning, I'm just like, she must have just started. This must have been first day of shooting or something.
It just didn't feel as believable.
Yeah, but the one later on, I'm like, oh my gosh,
yeah,
she's good.
like, okay, I feel you, girl. I feel you. You doing the thing. And so then I was like, well, why was the beginning like this? And now there are lots of explanations we could be reaching, and we could say, hey, maybe she was in shock. Maybe she didn't give the full, but because everybody processes these tragedies differently, right? I could pull from personal experience and say, definitely if I've been shocked and, in my personal life, I've, had tragedy where you're like, oh my gosh, something comes out of the blue. You weren't expecting it. And just kind of almost being unresponsive, not unresponsive completely, but just not even being able to, deal with the reality of what you're dealing with enough to even connect those emotions and break down all bad, but then the breakdown comes later, right? And maybe that was what was happening here, but I wanted to see more, in the early part of that. So if we're going to talk about the acting, I will go ahead and rate the acting. And I think for me, I'm going to put the acting again at around a 7.
Oh, okay. Wow. Yeah. With all that said, so I'll add some more.
Okay.
So you also had the enlisted friends, right? Mm-hmm. And, they were supposed to show different type of class, right? And it gives this very cartoonish, also mentioning the elder women from earlier, right? That it was kind of just too much, right?
Overtly stereotypical.
And, right. And it's like, is this supposed to be funny? Is this a joke?
And the dialogue. Right? But so see, some of that wasn't just the acting. Okay. Some of that was the actual
when you couple
dialogue.
it with it though, right? That's, I don't know. If you gonna give me this silly line, Denzel gonna deliver it to me in a way like
he gonna save you from your bad writing.
Yeah. So with that, I'm gonna just go ahead and have to say a 6.
Okay.
On the acting. Because again, those accents and stuff, and Kerry Washington, I don't think you mentioned her, did you? She didn't deliver that for me the way that Tyler Perry believes she did.
Well, okay, so I'm going to disagree a little bit with you. I have come to the conclusion with Kerry Washington. I really enjoyed her character in this film.
The character or the acting?
Both. Because that's who I saw as the character, right?
Okay.
And when I looked at the pictures, I'm like, yeah, she probably kind of talked that way. I don't know, maybe she really didn't. But when I look at the pictures, I imagine of the actual woman, I imagine her acting the way that Kerry Washington did. And even video, there's some black and white video of her from back in the day. And I'm like, okay, maybe this could be Kerry Washington. Only thing I will say is, Kerry cannot get away, even though she minimized it from that weird mouth thing that she always does. And that's just part of her facial expression. And it just is what it is.
Yeah, but so my thing is, so she has high moments, but how low are the low moments?
And so here's something to consider. The fact that we're watching her act as a person who is acting for the majority of the time that we see her on screen. By that, I mean, she's wearing the mask. She's wearing the mask of being this controlled Black woman in charge of the situation.
Okay, yeah.
Right? And so that's something else that we have to consider when we look
I don't
at
consider
how
that with,
she, portrayed that.
do I consider that with all the other roles, right? So when I see a Black person in corporate America in a film, right, then I don't know, like when I watch Waiting to Exhale and your boy, what's his name?
So part of it is because
John.
she's this Black woman in charge, but the other part of it is she is in charge and she's in the military and she wants to train these people as much as possible, so she cannot be friendly with them. So we don't see her letting her guard down and being friendly, except in the parts where she's with her cohort, right?
Yeah, but I think that's a convenient. Maybe you got it from her, but
I
think it's a convenient excuse that if it's bad acting, it's because it's supposed to look not genuine, right? So
she's putting on the act of someone who's supposed to be strong and
okay, we'll get into the spoilers, but she would be like a bad leader if I can detect that she's not. It doesn't seem genuine coming from
But
you.
see, the thing is, we're watching
observers,
it with
right?
observers of everything. But obviously, the people who were in the film believed it because, at one point, they're talking, and I don't want to overspoil it, but this is minor. Where she's talking about how she feels about a particular individual. And that person was like, oh, I thought you didn't like me. And she says, no, that's not true, right? Because the mask was so convincing.
But that's part of the writing, not the acting, right?
Wow.
The dialogue to me is that, okay, this person believes, but
Yeah. And
because like if I take, what's that other thing she was in? Scandal? She's always in that role, right? So if I take of what I see from her acting in there, and I say, oh, she's up there, high powered places. She needs to not look like a good actress in this moment because she's putting on a face.
I don't know, because I've just seen a range of her acting even when she was younger, and I just feel like she's a good actress.
Yeah, but I didn't say she wasn't a good actress. I say in this role, like her lows were lower than some other people who would have. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
her lows probably were higher than Obsidian, right?
Well, and for right now, if you guys have already seen the film, go to the comments and tell us what you thought of Kerry Washington's acting, because clearly, we kind of have two different views on that. But let's
that's
talk
why
about
that's why they get a 6
for sound. I would actually include, and I'm just gonna tease you guys with what my score is gonna be. But for the sound, I'm including the music, not the score, a particular song they were playing at the end of the film that I did kind of like, okay. Because, whenever you have a film that's about Black folks, I feel like we always have you've got this film where you have to have I don't know, I want to just call it the freedom song, but like the triumphant Black folks song. And y'all know what I mean, Cynthia Erivo at the end of Harriet talking about stand up, take my people with
and
me,
or
rise up,
glory.
or glory, right? From the movie about Selma, right? So the songs like that. And so there was a song like that at the end that I did kind of like, and I was like, okay, I feel you. As far as the sound that I heard throughout the film, there wasn't anything that I was like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. But I also wasn't like, this is bad. But I will say that I did note that the score was a little bit inappropriate at times as far as what emotion that they wanted to elicit. Something that's sad, and then the music is kind of a little bit too upbeat for that. But, at any rate, I'm still going to give it an 8. I still give that an 8 for the sound.
Okay.
Mainly because I like that song at the end.
That's that takes you a long way. I won't go that high because, of course, like you said, the score, some parts was like, wait, what? And then I'm like, hold up, you need to do something right here with the score. It just never delivers. It's kind of like they took a track, kind of like these, I don't know what you call it, whatever different royalty free type sounds that you could go or pay for, right? And just license, and then you lay it out on your own.
Well, so what I
like
feel
it's
like
just very
is
generic.
that with the best films, they have the best people doing every single role, and they pay them well to do it, right? So you're going to have the best person who is doing the costumes. You're going to have the best person who's laying down the score, who's composing the score from scratch, and all of these things, right?
I think there are people who aren't the best who could have done better than this. Well,
but if it was kind of like, I don't, if there were parts of it that were sort of like out the box and pieced together, as opposed to having a composer who fully, and I'm not sure one way or the other how the person who put it together, like, I don't know, was Tyler, on his
it was
Apple
like, yeah, come on over here. I like this sound.
And he's like, yeah, these three, let's use that for, he's downloading from, what is that one sound site?
Yeah.
Epidemic Sounds, and he's using the stuff people use in their YouTube videos.
Yeah. So let's say Aaron Zigman, because the director has some play in when it comes to the editing, which comes later, about when to make the music more dramatic, when to pull back sometimes, right? Which music to use. So, it's not just complete indictment of the composer themselves.
Sure.
But so that's what I get from the score. It's like, all right, just things aren't happening. It just meets standard, I guess. Then you have the ADR, automatic dialogue replacement. They film the stuff and then maybe they need to go back and re-record parts of the audio.
Yeah.
I heard a lot of that, and you could hear plosives. And at one point I was like, did I just hear that breath in there from Kerry Washington? Right.
Which
her character.
Should not happen. Yeah.
It's very hard for it not to happen, but that it's happened. And then if it's like a faraway shot, the voice is booming the way you probably hear me right now.
Yeah.
And it's like, wait, hold on, they're over there. You know what I'm saying?
If I see this, I would not hear that. It doesn't match up with what you're seeing and hearing at the same time.
Yeah. For those reasons, we could start with a 1. No.
Shut up.
I could say it's about a 7 because it wasn't terrible. Right?
Yeah.
And I think 6, maybe average or below, because if you're making movies below that in sound, you really got a terrible movie.
Yeah. Yeah. Because you can't tolerate bad sound in a film. So, yeah. So then for the last and final category, let's talk about the editing. What did you think of the editing? And what?
So we talked about the AI type of parts or green screen, whatever it is. There was only one thing that I saw and I was like, wait, why was that edited like that? The cut that way. So it was Kerry Washington on the screen. They cut and then somebody else is there with her and she's partially on the screen. And I'm like, wait, hold up. That's kind of jarring for me to see this, right? Cut from this character back to this character and kind of off screen a little bit. Like, ugh. I guess the story was chronological, right? It was put together the way I should have seen it. I kind of have to incorporate the ADR stuff into the editing. And the sound, right? Because that's part of deciding, all right, cut the music right here, decide to put this music, and that may just be straight direction rather than editing. But you work with what you have and maybe choosing certain takes. But it told the stories all together, and then we got a little montage at the end of what actually happened of the actual people who were involved.
Yes.
So you get a plus for adding that in.
Okay.
So I'm going to just go ahead and give the editing an 8.
All right. And then for my editing score, I will also give it an 8 because I think that, number one, I started at least a meet standard with the editing because I, really didn't feel that the editing itself was, I didn't pick up on this part where you felt it was jarring or whatever. But, I didn't think it was that bad. I just was like, at least it's meet standards. But then what gets them a little bit of bump with the editing, I also feel, is that it felt believable and chronological. But then why it wouldn't be like a 10 is 2 things. One, when it comes to the way that beginning part of the film is edited, the part where I mentioned earlier where there was a little confusion, like, okay, what are we doing? And then after we kind of get what the point is, what are they going to be there for? What is the mission? Then in retrospect, I was able to go back in my mind 30 minutes into the film and say, Oh, okay. So that's why they were saying these voices. And yes, they did
Oh,
say X,
yeah,
Y,
I
and
forgot
Z.
about that.
You know,
Yeah.
they said that. Okay. I got it now. But I feel that if it was effective editing, then I should have gotten it when I heard it. Oh, there's a problem here, right? And you spelled out everything else in the film, right?
Yeah,
Because
but
they don't.
is it an editing problem if you don't have the footage?
Well,
You know what I'm saying? Like
then,
he didn't decide to record those things.
if he didn't record something, then I think we could have figured out a way to take something that happens technically later, where you know, where they, the thing that brings it to their attention, somehow it could be that letters aren't being delivered, or you know, something
Yeah.
like that. Some way that we could figure out. If we can do the ADR, then even if it's not recorded, we can have voiceover artists could have
Yeah,
done.
because those letters really were voiceover artists anyway.
Yeah,
so
yeah. So to me, that's not a big issue. So that was one ding against the editing. And the second thing, which you brought up earlier, was like, oh, at the end, you know, they have the black and white montage of the actual footage from the 688. And I'm like, okay, we had all this all the time. Then how come y'all didn't? I don't know.
just
Like, it just. Yeah, I was like, well, y'all could have weaved some of this in somehow, some way, or like recreated all of the actual shots. And I guess they tried to, you know, but you
Yeah.
understand what I mean. Or parts
when
of
we
the
get
film,
into the spoilers, we're gonna get to
you know
that.
how they could have made them like black and white at that time, so that it kind of
Ah.
makes you feel like, oh, I saw this shot from, you know, when you get to see the montage later at the end of the film. But, you know, all in all, even still, that's a petty complaint. So editing for me was an 8, you know.
Dang, so let's say Cheri gives it a 7.9.
7.9.
Dang.
And Heit gives it.
I don't know, a 7.6. So
Yeah,
we're pretty close.
pretty close in that. So, I mean, we might as well just round it up to an 8. We both give it about an 8 out of 10
I'll give
stars.
it no, I round mine down to a 7.5.
Okay, you giving it.
I can't
you
give a
look
whole half a point.
Well, I'm at 7.9. So I give it an 8. Heit gives it a 7.5. Again, Tyler Perry really has evolved beyond the Madea idea, right?
You don't need a deep Madea idea. You don't need all the salacious stuff. Even though it could have went there, it was parts where I'm like, is it going to go there? Like, especially at the beginning. Oh man, don't do it.
Yeah. And you don't need the crutch of the character that is Madea. That's not saying bad things about her in this moment, but you don't need the crutch of that character who you don't have to reinvent each time, because it's kind of like, you know, she builds on herself. Oh, if it's a Madea movie, then all I have to do is figure these other few characters out, but Madea can come and run interference and patch everything up in between.
Right. And tell us the morals of all of what's going on.
But this was very brave. This was a brave attempt, and I'm proud of Tyler Perry.
Is it brave?
Yes.
If somebody come to me tomorrow and say, I give you $30 million to make this movie, you best believe I'm doing it.
Yeah, but Tyler Perry has the kind of money that's to where, okay.
But,
you know,
you also want to be doing cultural significant things too.
Well, and I don't think I think Tyler Perry is now like, I want my legacy to not be what I made my money on, right? Because if you look at the Blues
that's what I'm saying about it being brave, right?
And this, but I think it is brave because he knows he can make these other films, and he continues to. We just saw, what's the one where not the casket and what was that movie? I forgot the name of it.
Oh,
the one he put out where they took the casket out the living room. Y'all already know because we covered it. You know, we covered it on this channel. You know,
it was in the church. It was not the casket.
It was practically like a living room, and you know, they done took the body out of the church in the middle of during the funeral, and just foolishness. So like, he can be versatile, right? And so I've seen something where he has a pretty good attempt at a historical film that, quite frankly, we know nobody else was probably going to cover. Nobody was probably going to make this film. He made it.
Yeah, you know why, right?
Why?
Because the people who have the money don't give us money to make the films, right? That's why. And then when somebody's willing to give money, hey, let's just give it to the popular guy.
Yeah, well, and I like that he did what he wanted to do with this, and that he felt like he should do this.
And then maybe there are some who's just like, we don't want to make black movies anymore in that sort of way, right? I just want to make a universal movie. I'm black. I shouldn't be able to make a story about anything.
Yeah.
You know, but Tyler Perry is just like, for the most part, I'm going to just do the black movies.
Yeah, so I think we're kind of coming to the end of our non-spoiler part of the review. If you haven't actually seen this film, it is currently at the time of this posting on Netflix, so you guys can watch it and get back to the spoiler part. But I'm gonna go ahead and say you can still keep watching, and
Yeah,
we
this is the
probably
real
won't spoil
juicy
it.
part.
This is the juicy part. But if you don't want any spoilers, go ahead and hop on
Yeah.
off the call.
Right.
And do that. But so now into the spoilers.
Yeah, so they open up right with that whole war scene, and I'm like, dang, they ain't got no recoil on these guns. These bodies is flying like Rambo all over the
they are.
place.
And see, the thing is, I never really know like what to expect. Like, if you get hit with something, are you really gonna fly in the air like that? Or
bro, this you know how like you have those old war movies, and then something explodes, and then it's like bodies just fleeing all over 10 feet in the air and stuff.
Yes.
That's how it was.
Well, and I think that we should just go ahead and kind of just like talk about the film in chronological order and stuff like that as we go.
Yeah.
So the film gets right into the action, and then we find out that this who we think is like the main character, one of the main characters, who actually was also the surviving person who was from the 6888. In real life, that Tyler Perry was able to actually sit down with an interview and tell her part of the story. So the deal is that we see this action scene, and we see a guy, a white guy, who die in this scene.
Yeah, his plane went down, and he had a letter on him, and the guy pulled him out the plane, and then they get the letter, and I'm like, wait, hold on, you might want to check, see if you can save him something. I don't know, is it obvious that he's dead? And the first thing he do to me is he pulls out the letter and like, oh my, and there's this dramatic thing about this letter.
Yes, so then we're
I'm
like, okay, what's going on?
Are we saving Private Ryan in this? We got to find who to give this letter to.
It does kind of remind you of Private Ryan a little bit, right? So then we get to this point where we see, a black teenager, she appears to be a teenager, young woman, comes out of school, and she's clearly someplace that's integrated or whatever. So she's in the North, and a white guy who he actually turns out to be Jewish, he pulls up in his car and he's picking her up. I'm like, whoa, hold on. We're talking about interracial dating at this point already. And so the long and short of it is somebody from school, a white girl, she doesn't like it. And so she's making snide remarks and comments. But anyway, the girl is picked up by the guy, and they drive off in the car, and they're having a good time. And he's clearly going to be enlisting in World War II.
But it's like, all right, we got this race movie, right? But it's the 1940s, but you'll get it if you get it. But we got this race movie, and it's kind of funny. Look, let's run off, jump in the back of my car with these blatant racists back there. Yeah. Acting like a mob, right? Basically, that's what we're seeing. We're seeing that's his story and how he gets off to war and go to, to get shot down. And he just basically becomes her ghost.
Yeah. So like essentially what it is the nature of their relationship is that they haven't like gone all the way with admitting their true feelings for one another because of all of the barriers, right? He's Jewish. She's, she's black, and everybody's looking at them crazy for this interracial relationship that they're having. But right before he's due to go to war, he does tell her like, hey, he kisses her, and they kiss and everything. So clearly it's gone romantic if it hadn't been before that time. And everybody sees it. And so she's waiting for letters from him that never arrive. So this is what's supposed to be setting up the story of why they even need, the 6888 to be delivering the letters. Because come to find out, the letters weren't going either way between the troops and their family, nor the family to the troops, right? Yeah.
So he goes off. He's basically missing, and she decides, I'm gonna just join the army out of nowhere. Basically, there was like a commercial or something.
Well, and she found out he's dead. Really, his family's notified that he's dead, and then she decides to join.
Right. That's just very weird. That would be the way that things happen. That's my thing. Like it wasn't developed enough to show me their attachment and to show me the reason that she would want to join. I guess, they kind of hinted, okay, we ain't got money for college and I just got to go to the military now, right? But, I still need some more heavy-handed pushing, like what's going on.
Well, and I think because he never came back, right? So what is not clear to us in the beginning is that he never comes back to, his body never comes back. He never comes back. He actually, turns out, was buried in Europe in, a military cemetery there, an American cemetery in Europe. So it's, you don't get the funeral. You don't get all of the supposed closure you're supposed to get. So she's very heartbroken. And I think her decision to join was, number one, she was emotional and, whatever. And then number two, she says when she finally does find his grave, that I finally found you. So I think in a way she went there to see the grave. She went, although she didn't know she would be sent there.
Exactly.
So I don't really know. But I think she thought that somehow she was just going to do what he was doing, right? To dedicate herself to the same cause, because he wanted to go. And it is World War II, and he was Jewish, and he wanted to fight the Nazis. That's what we had, going on in the dynamic there. But when she joins, she is, let's talk about the train ride there.
Yeah, so the train ride there, she meets up with this kind of like real life, right? Before you actually get there, you're all taking the same transportation, right? To get to wherever you're going to be training or wherever you're going to be, right? And she meets up basically with some other women.
Yeah.
And they're going to this place. And then, they're crossing the Mason-Dixon line, right?
Because she's from somewhere outside of Philadelphia. So they're coming from the north, yeah.
And they're headed south to Georgia, maybe? And
somewhere.
They are crossing the Mason-Dixon line. So now, I think in real life they had to switch trains. But they were just like, all right, this was the weird part, wrong part to me, right? So they told the white people to get up and move.
Right.
Instead of showing me the reverse. Saying, hey, black person, that humiliation of forcing black women, like which happened a lot of the time, to move to the back,
right? Because
we're crossing this line. And, there was one who could be passing, right? Who basically was like, no, I don't need to move.
I'm black.
I'm black, so I'm staying with the black.
Yes.
The blacks. Yeah, so... that happened. And so these hard moments that we usually get
a little watered
highlighted for me. And maybe that's just choice, right?
But what was highlighted was class differences between the black people who were there, even on this train. They barely know each other. And then you got, kind of these educated blacks that are kind of like snooty patooty. And then you have kind of the representation of one black woman who mentions that she had been married and left her husband or whatever, and she seems not, because they're talking about Mary McLeod Bethune, and she's like, who is that? And they're like, you don't know who she is, and it's a whole thing,
right? So really how I see this is as glory for women in 35 years later, maybe.
Yeah.
Right. So the thing is, so you have a commanding officer who is Kerry Washington. And, they show up and basically, I'm going to train you. She acting like a drill sergeant out of place. Right. But like in Glory, we would see that, okay, you're the sergeant. You're in charge of these men, right? In your platoon or whatever. Right. This one, everything was basically the doing of the commanding officer, the captain. So like every little thing, she was there. She's basically like the drill sergeant in boot camp, training them up on how to do everything.
Yeah. And I think because it was women and then because it was black women, right, that the hierarchy was just very basic.
No, I think that's wrong.
Okay.
Like we saw in Glory, you're going to set up a chain of command because you're a leader. You're a good one. That's what it does. This is how, how the army works. You have leaders at all of these levels, is my point. And we didn't see that in the movie at all.
So it brings me back to the whole idea about what type of resources did Tyler Perry actually call upon when it comes to the experts in these areas. And
so Tyler Perry said he's seen the precision of them marching because that became a part of the film, right? How well they marched. That he said, I see this precision. I need to call up Debbie Allen, a dance choreographer. I was a little
surprised by that. Although what I would say is how they marched looked all right to me.
It did to me when I saw it. I'm like, hopping a little too much. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't.
But see, that's your military experts. He was talking. I feel like.
Yeah, they're like hopping, or they're not taking full strides. Right? It's like somebody who didn't go through it, right? If I want somebody who's going to have the precision of a military unit marching, that's who I'm going to get. The people who train those, and they're all over the country.
So maybe the compromise is wanting to
wanted to appease your people you look up to.
Yeah.
You like Debbie Allen, so I'm gonna hire the accomplished person already because, you know, Oprah friend probably. I don't know if they're friends, but you know what I'm saying? They're in the industry. Right? It's just how it is. The first thing, if I'm like, okay, I'm gonna do this military movie, who's the military consultant we're using?
Right.
That's the first thing.
Right. And I think he would have been really well served by having either more or better military consultants if he had one. He would have been really well served by having some type of historical consultant to let him know, okay, this is exactly what the money looked like. This is exactly what the dress looked like. Now, it probably was easier for the uniforms and stuff like that. And I really didn't question what the hairstyles were.
So I wasn't like really being critical of like the whole military thing, but it's just parts of it, right?
Yeah.
You tell me you elite marching, when y'all come to a halt, do eyes right, and then salute, and then start marching again. I'm like, no. That don't make sense. You have footage of them doing eyes right in the movie at the end, right? And that's much more impressive than stopping, turning, and looking, right? Or they're coming with the flag and nobody salutes. Like, it's just, like, you know, things like that when your consultant is going to tell you.
Yeah.
Right? But that's the precision that you were looking for that you didn't know where to get it from.
Well, and this is what makes me think of like one of the best, war movies of all time.
Which one?
Like Full Metal Jacket. Well, I won't say the war part wasn't the best, but like I did think that the boot camp was really good. But I think about the fact that the guy who plays the drill sergeant, Arlie Ermy, that's what he did. He was an expert. He actually wasn't the actor at first. He was the consultant, and then they were like, "You're so doggone good.
You might as well do it.
You need to be in this role, right? Because he could freestyle the insults and all that stuff, right?" So I feel that a film like this would be better served by that, and it brings me back to this whole point of when Gayle King was talking to Tyler Perry and Kerry Washington, on the interview that actually was the day that this was released, which is actually today when we're recording it this morning. And she says, "Oh, it was written and directed and by Tyler Perry because he does everything." Like, that is such a compliment. But there is a point where you doing everything diminishes your work.
Right.
Okay. And this is one of those times because there's no way that that one person is an expert on all of these things.
When you don't even know who to hire.
Yeah. And because
I don't remember. I just remember seeing the one credit of producer Tyler Perry, and I'm like, was anybody else?
Well, it was executive produced, which is a different thing, but executive produced by Kerry Washington. But yeah, so to me, I just think that this is an ongoing criticism I would have of Tyler Perry's approach. But he's rich and he can do whatever he want to do. He got his own studios, and who am I to call? But I would say I think that his art would be better if he would consider just letting other people who know better than him have some input.
So they went off to training, right?
Yeah.
And basically they're doing their training, and it's just like Glory. We need to go on a mission. We good. The boys are the two, whatever he was saying. Well, I don't remember the name of the unit. Send us out there when everybody coming back sad and stuff, right? They were like, we're black, right? You send us, we show them what we could do, right? So they have this thing in the theater where basically they're watching a movie, and then some white soldiers come up. Basically, one of them has higher rank, one is lower. This thing kind of happened to me. It wasn't on a race thing while I was deployed, but it's something similar to that. But they was like, get up. Right, and move because y'all black and y'all we need these seats up front. And they were being disrespectful to an officer, and then it just basically was resolved because they got some orders to go do something. Right, because she's like, okay, I want this guy court-martialed and stuff, basically, and he was like, but look, you get deployed, and that was just erased. There's no consequences, no nothing in a when you showed me this act happen.
Yes.
And it's just like at every other movie like that. In the end, they just give you respect now all of a sudden because you earned it. Like I don't like those stories.
So when we also talk about the main character from the first act, by the time she enlists and, Kerry Washington is her, she's reporting into Kerry Washington, who is helping to do all of her training and whatnot. then, she's not a very good soldier. She's not good at
Bruh.
the physical stuff. She's like about to flunk out. She's getting, demerits
Bad press.
and all of that, bad press. And at one point she really is doing bad. And then she begins to hallucinate her white boyfriend who is dead, the boyfriend ghost. And he's giving her the strength to be able to make it through her training and stuff. And I was like, okay, so
White
earlier
savior.
I said earlier, like, okay, I need to understand, was this part true or was this the creative license? Because the woman who said that, yes, she had a friend. This is what she said. I had a friend, who was white, who was killed. And, she became emotional at 100 years old, telling Tyler Perry about this, or I think she was 99 when she said this part. So she told him about it and everything like that. So I'm like, okay, was he just your friend or was he like your boy? Because in the movie, he was clearly her boyfriend by the time, they're making commitments to one another. Write me, wait for me kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so
they were kissing and stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, this
was
very
a love
different.
interest.
And
so that's not the way it was put. And I need to know, did Tyler Perry make this part up or was
probably
this real?
they always do that in movies like this.
Mhm.
But that was another thing. Okay, you have this white savior who's actually had to come in the form of a ghost to give you enough chutzpah, right?
Yeah.
To stand up and, I don't know, make it through. And he was like, basically, look at her or this situation like you look at that white girl at school.
Yeah. That's
who was
really what he said. Look at
antagonizing
this
us.
black woman and look at the white girl at school who is giving you a hard time
Like,
and how
no.
we used to treat her. Dude, it's the same thing. This is what, the ghost is telling her. And she sees this ghost 2-3 times, during training and other things that are trying to her
Yeah.
while she's in.
And then you meet a black dude and the black dude want to get with you. He's already married. He's like, I'm going to get
He
married.
ain't married yet, but
Yeah, he's like, I'm gonna get
engaged.
married next week, and if you say you want to be with me, then I'm gonna just break it off with my other.
and she don't even
with
know
my
this
fiance.
dude. Like literally,
He don't know her.
he's just looked at her.
He been watching her doing training, and now he want to marry her.
Oh man, like yeah.
And when I was like, oh come on, here we go. No, stop,
but
Tyler.
that is who she wound up with at the end of it all.
Yeah.
So mhm. But at least this is the story according to the way it was told, plus whatever Tyler Perry chose to infuse. So to get off of that, because the story does kind of jump, and then we get Susan Sarandon as Eleanor Roosevelt and
Yeah.
Oprah Winfrey as Mary McLeod Bethune, both amazing, and they were on
Right.
point with their stuff.
I mentioned, they got orders to go
Yeah.
to Europe. That's because Mary McLeod Bethune,
Yeah.
who met with
Sat up in the White House and was like, listen up. Y'all ain't been able to do it, but I know somebody who can.
And
get that
so that's
mail
part of
delivered.
the thing. We had to do whatever, any little demeaning role, because like everybody looked at it like, yeah, that ain't nothing, going off to fight, right? Like not to do any real role, but to deliver mail is how it's looked at.
Well, one thing that Kerry Washington's character says that really stuck with me that I'm still like, yes, is she was saying, you have the burden to be better than the white soldiers. It's not good enough for you to be just as good as them. You have the burden to be better. And just, those words really touched me.
Yeah.
Because it is a burden, but it's the burden that we all carry of, I can't just be just as
Yeah.
good. I have to actually be better to get the same or even less.
She delivered too many of these speeches like this, though.
Mm.
It was like 8 of them where she's like,
Uh-huh.
you know what I'm saying?
They believe that you cannot do it.
Yeah, it's
And
like,
this
come
is
on.
why, but-
I need a movie. I don't need to, you got to give me 1 or maybe 2.
Yes.
But 1 big one, right? And it was too many of those.
Yes.
But so the thing is, when they give them the mission, then she basically like, yeah, I'll do that in 6 months. You're trying to show me a good leader, but the leader didn't ask for the details and know what you were promising.
Well,
That was, it's kind
that
of
might have
like,
been just like another Tyler Perry writing thing. Because
Yeah,
again,
because
how
it's-
accurate was
yeah,
that story?
it still could have been like, all right, there's 17 million pieces of mail, and you like, yeah, okay, I could do it in 6 months, right?
And that's not an exaggeration. That's
Right.
the real estimate. 17 million
Yeah.
pieces of mail to do in 6 months.
Right. And then it could show, okay, you got there and you look around and you're like, 17 pieces of mail isn't what I imagined. That's different than agreeing and saying, yeah, I'll do this in 6 months and not even knowing what the mission is.
Yep.
And it looks bad on somebody who, if they're in a movie like this, I'm supposed to look at as you know, not flawed, not heavily flawed. That's a big flaw in a leader to me. Something like that.
And, once they got that assignment and then they got over there, they're catching hell from the white people who really don't want them there to begin with and being demeaned by them. But they say, okay, your operations will be taking place in this old school, and the places like rats and, whatever.
But before that, that's where we get the march scene, though.
Oh, yes. Okay. When they first arrived, they did march.
Right. So they basically like, all right, you got to march. You don't get a ride over there, right? But... again, with the leadership, she's like, all right, then we will march. And then she took off in a Jeep.
She said, let's march. And she said, she blazed off.
Look, what's old girl name? Princess Misty.
Basically. So but the first thing that they do when they get there is they spend time like essentially remodeling.
Bro, they remodeled the entire school.
They had a beauty parlor in there.
So think about it. A 6-month tour, anybody in the military or who have been, a 6-month tour off I guess you're at war, right? You're at war. They remodeled this place. It wasn't like bivouac or that sort of thing. It was like they got shiny new floors, painted the walls, like everything. It was crazy.
Yes. So that was the first order of business. But let me just say, it must have worked out because they finished their assignment in half the time allotted. In spite of everything bad, because believe me, them people was over there hating on them.
Right.
And the thing about the mail, so what was so hard about it? Number one, they weren't even attempting to really deliver the mail. But the other thing is, the hard about it is the mail had been sitting up in places that rats and stuff, and it wasn't just letters, it was parcels, so the rats had eaten through stuff. People had been sent care packages and the names and whoever was supposed to go to, stuff was wet and moldy, but yes, somehow they were supposed to figure out how to get this not only to the people back in the States, but then to the troops wherever they were at any given time.
So quick aside, when I was in Iraq, so we got like care package from strangers individually, right? So you could send it to the unit and be like, this for the unit. So I guess they found out our unit and they sent us individual packages, right? There's a cultural issue, right?
Yeah.
So somebody sent me some music, right? They sent me a burnt CD and they sent me a letter, right? And they like, so-and-so, I think it was...
They sent you some Lee Greenwood, some country music?
No, they sent me Kenny Chesney maybe. I don't remember who. No, it was an older artist, right? Because this person was older. So I can't remember who was real big in the 80s. I don't know. It was one of them cats. But it was a burnt CD. And in the letter, they were talking about how Brad Pitt, I think when they married Angelina Jolie or something, I don't know. Somebody got married. And I'm like, oh, that's so nice,
But it was probably just nice to hear from somebody, which is the whole point of this delivery, was that it helps morale.
Yeah, exactly. But culturally, it's just like, all right, I listen to the CD.
Thank you so much. But,
but they give you some little snacks and stuff too. But but some of the letters and stuff probably just from being on a battlefield and stuff was all messed up and going through war.
Yeah, especially the ones that were on their soldiers' bodies when they died, and these are the letters they need to, make it back home. Yeah. They were bloody and all that.
Yeah, so they had to come up with a way to figure this out, right?
Yes.
How do we figure out we can't read nothing on here and it's just all tore up? We gotta.
So they had like multiple systems of, we found this by the perfume that the woman was wearing and where it was bought from.
Yeah.
We could, or people who had the same names. Like they had so many challenges. And then there was another thing, trying to figure out where the troops were actually located. And then they had this huge breakthrough when they realized that the troops had been drawing clues by
the patches. So the unit patches, army patches, they have unit insignia or whatever, and they were drawing that on the letters, some of the letters or the envelopes, and that's how they would find out, it's just for this,
this is where they are, right now.
Yeah, so because they knew where all of the organizations were.
Yeah. So, but like I said, every time you turn around, there's still some more racism that they're having to deal with this whole thing.
So one time your girl broke down, though, who you thought was the protagonist at the beginning, right?
Yeah.
So there was this thing with the dog tags or whatever, and I guess they just had a box that they would just throw them in or something. I don't know what was going on with that, really. But she got really upset and said, you don't just throw them in there. You know, these people have died. You got to respect them. And she ran off in the bathroom, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then she's, you know, a black person in the 40s. And then she tells the story finally, because, you know, they got to keep these secrets in these movies to her friends. And she talk about how Abram was shot down and stuff. And nobody was like, wait, hold on.
Mm-hmm.
Our men don't get shot down, even though they say it turned out to be a myth. I don't know. About the Tuskegee Airmen, who basically the only black ones who could fly, right? So
nobody figured out that she was dating this white guy.
It's a white guy?
Yeah.
You messing with a white dude right now? But yeah, it's just not questioned, not brought up, no details about him asked or anything. But, you know, but that's when you could see that her acting appeared to be better in that point.
And then she had the country friend who is in this friend group. She just talked too much. She was always saying the wrong thing and being brash and brazen and unapologetic. Yes, that's what I was going to say. She reminded me of Sophia off of The Color Purple, except Sophia wasn't quite as ignorant acting. And you know what I'm saying? Sophia was more sweet. This girl was like, I don't care. That's just me. And I'm not apologizing, you know. And so, well,
that's the character that a lot of people are going to attach to, because when we see these movies, that's who they like the Angela, right?
Yeah. Yeah, she was like that. And I was like, you're just so insensitive. You know, you're just so insensitive. But she did remind me of Sophia.
Maybe, what is it, like The Private Trip, right? From Glory. Mm-hmm. Denzel Washington's character.
Yeah, because he was unapologetic too.
Yeah, he was just like, I do whatever. And he talking trash to everybody and stuff and how they are. Even though she kind of was the bully one, because she was the one out of the class.
Yeah.
The group class or whatever.
Well, and that's
or what they portrayed themselves to be, right? You would actually probably call them bougie.
Well, and that's probably her attempt to kind of compensate, right? Is that she's like, well, I'm with these bougie people, so let me, you know, make sure that they understand that I'm me. And, you know, so she's trying to hold her space, if you will.
Right. And all this time, this one old dude is trying to get with old girl.
Yes.
Right. And eventually we get to a part that I guess you weren't expecting, right?
Yeah, they're delivering some mail and they...
Yeah, so there's a roadblock and they're like, yo, I'm not going to stop. And then they turn. Bruh, I shouldn't laugh because I don't know if it happened like this. So this is the thing. If somebody dies, right, in a film and, you know, you can't make it look like they done something they shouldn't have done, right? Mm-hmm. So it may seem good in a regular film, but if there's a roadblock and I'm driving a military vehicle and their allies stop, what's going on, right? Why are you trying to stop me? They just totally disregarded it, turned, ended up basically on some artillery or ammunition or something, right? Some type of mine or something. They stopped and then tried to get away. And then there's this huge explosion.
Yeah, and they lost, you know, some women. In that, and then not only did they lose them, you would think, oh, would they bury them? No, the army was not going to pay for them to be buried at that same cemetery that the girl's boyfriend had, you know, been buried at in Europe. Nah, so then they had to take up a collection, which is how this $20 bill that is from 2024.
All of the money look like big faces,
big face money.
Yeah,
you know, and somebody just drops a $20 in a collection plate as they're taking up.
But that became a part of it. Like, so we you know, one of the justifications from the general is like, well, you know, they had to do something wrong because of what happened to them, right? But me looking at it, something did, right? So it's kind of like,
wrong,
but then as the leader, she's like, I know they didn't do something wrong because I trained them. So that part's not convincing to me. If I perceive that they done something,
see, I wouldn't have even picked up on that. I would, you know,
I don't know. So if you, I don't know. Yeah, maybe if you. Because a lot of people don't really consider what the military, what somebody would do. But in any situation, would you stop if somebody's like, no, don't go?
I would have.
And both roads weren't. It's just.
I don't know. It depends on how much I trust them. And who it is. And, you know. And that's the other problem. You know, you got enemies within.
But I think they were I think they were in England at the time. Or France. I don't know, one or two. But I guess it could have been. That's the issue. But it was unexploded ordnance in the road.
These women,
probably.
how much do you trust any white people?
Yeah.
So, you know, that's what's going on, because they're catching hell from the people that are in the military.
But you have to give me that as a filmmaker. Now I need to know why. Okay, I ain't trusting this. You know what I'm saying? And then turn. I ain't stopping for no.
Oh my gosh.
Then I'm like, all right, now I understand.
Yeah. Yeah. So, at the end, they do become successful at delivering their mail. And, there's this great turnaround when because people get happy when they start getting that mail, right? And they finally get the respect that they should have gotten all along and that they deserve. But it's,
but the big part was, the general came and he has to do an inspection, right? And some of them are asleep because they took on 24 hours, 3 shifts, right? Some of them aren't in formation. And then he's, being very critical of everything. And then he's just like, I'm going to send in a white lieutenant who is a lower rank than Kerry Washington's character, who is at that point major, maybe. And then she, like, over my dead body, which is total disrespect, right? Against every rule of military, right? And that's what happens. And then she's basically about to get court-martialed for that. Mm-hmm. And then the movie depicts that, all of a sudden, his unit, who he was complaining about not getting mail, got mail at that moment where he was basically trying to start pushing that through. So then they show everybody else getting mail. Everybody's happy. And then we have the part at the end of Glory where they walk by and everybody start clapping for the unit.
Yeah.
Right? Because you did a good job. You earned our respect.
But it's funny because it's like the respect is just never given because you're like human or because you've reached or whatever rank in this particular organization. It's always that I have to do something extraordinary for you. And then you go, okay, I'll give you the basic respect that I give anybody else without batting an eye.
Yeah. But I'm supposed to be proud that they now respect me. They don't give me a good feeling at the end of these movies when you do that.
Mm-hmm. But, I respect these women and I respect what they actually did and sacrificed to go through that, because it definitely could not be easy. And think of all of just the foreign experiences where, you're in places where you don't feel safe and where even within the organization that's supposed to be protecting you, they don't care. And in fact, they're trying to do things to pressure you to get you out of there. And so, it's just very, and I'm just glad they told the story.
What do you think of the ending? So basically they have this standing ovation and they all get saluted finally. Mm-hmm. But then right after that, we get the real part of what really happened, the real characters, real people. And they're like, we weren't thanked for any of this. Yeah. You just showed me this at the end of this movie. And then she's like, ain't nobody thanked us. Nobody showed us appreciation for what we done. So, and then the ending, it just happened so fast. They got their mail. I guess the end is where she stood up and it's like, over my dead body, right? And then we got our mail. Salute. Bam. Cut to credits, basically.
Yeah. Well, because we were pushing up on that 2 hours, He was getting close to that 2 hour mark.
Yeah. So the ending felt a little rushed.
What did y'all think? Go to the comments if you've seen it. What did you guys think of the movie? I feel like this is just one of those things where it is a public service. It is like people need to know this story. Black women and Black people in general who have done things and contributed the entire time in the building, the defending of this nation, that are constantly disrespected, that are constantly written out of history, deserve to have their stories told. And so, this was a good thing, Tyler.
Yeah, all the time, like when I see this thing, I'm like, dang. And every time you always going to say the same thing. How come I didn't know about this? But there was another one called The 24th. That was a really good movie. It's about what went on in Houston. You just got to see it.
It was
the
good.
Black soldiers in around Houston and Galveston. I think they were in both areas. I like these when these stories are told because they just need to all the time. And if there's another one, if it's Tyler Perry that's telling it, I'll just be like, oh, yeah, good. Yeah, let Tyler Perry do it.
Okay, let him do it.
Before this, I'm like, please, no, don't.
Yeah, I'm willing to listen next time, too, but I would also say if somehow anybody has like a smoke signal to Tyler Perry, like maybe just the attention to detail, because I really think consultants could help him so much. Like, wouldn't it be amazing if after everything Tyler Perry did, if he could actually have a quality piece that's Oscar worthy, I just think that would be a nice way to round out a career, because it would really show the full circle evolution of, it wouldn't be full circle.
I don't know.
But it would be an evolution.
Yeah.
But the question is whether he's going to consider that, because I think a big part of him is like, I do it all. I do everything. And so he doesn't
and I think
want to.
everybody who do things like this, you do wish for that top honor.
Mm-hmm.
I know it got to be eating him up for all he's accomplished.
Oh, he won an Oscar. He does. But, yeah.
Maybe if Oprah gets the Oscar, I don't know if that's enough for a supporting role.
Yeah, she Oprah was in there for 45 seconds. So no. No, but yeah. I don't. So look, this ain't probably getting an Oscar, but it still was amazing anyway. It was a great attempt. And I think he has to practice making more films like this. Now, what I would say is, you know how when something piques your interest and then you go want to make films like that? I will be a little bit disappointed if the next film is back to
Mea Culpa Part 2.
Mea Culpa Part 2,
Bruh.
or one of these other,
Yep. So if you made it this far, go ahead and type no Madea in the comments so we'll know you're one of the real ones who stick around to the end and have watched the film.
And be sure to check out the video that is on the screen right now. And you know what? Check out the pinned comment, because we do put, little tidbits, little video things for you all to check out there from time to time.